Good afternoon and welcome to Olive Glen's annual meeting. I'm Carrie Lejanski, administrator at Olive Glen. I'd like to start things off by reading a couple of things from the Bible and from the writings of Mary Baker Eddy. First, from the Bible, Psalms. O Lord, my God, in thee do I put my trust. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. I will not fear what flesh can do unto me. I will not be afraid what man can do unto me. I will not trust in my bow, neither shall my sword save me. In thee, O Lord, do I put my trust. Let me never be put to confusion. And from the writings of Mary Baker Eddy, trust truth, not error, and truth will give you all that belongs to the rights of freedom. The first spontaneous motion of truth and love, acting through Christian science on my roused consciousness, banished at once and forever the fundamental error of faith in things material. For spirit to be supreme in demonstration, it must be supreme in our affections, and we must be clad with divine power. If there be any monopoly in my teaching, it lies in this utter reliance upon the one God, to whom belong all things. We are Christian scientists only as we quit our reliance upon that which is false and grasp the true. Relying on God is the subject of today's talk by our speaker, Christian Science practitioner, Emilio Castroman. The desire to rely on God alone is something close to the hearts of Christian scientists, isn't it? Something we all have in common. And it's something that we see evidence of every day at Olive Glen in so many different ways. That deep desire and prayer to lean on God is what brings individuals to Olive Glen for care. It's at the heart of what Christian Science nursing is all about, supporting others in their efforts to turn to God for healing. It's what informs how Christian Science nurses view a patient and the kind of care that Christian Science nurses provide. Actually, in thinking about it, a lot goes on at Olive Glen, whether it's grooming the grounds, maintaining the living spaces, planning activities. All of it is motivated by a sincere desire to create an atmosphere that supports feeling close to God and leaning on God. In fact, Olive Glen's vision statement makes that very point. It says, to inspire all who enter the atmosphere of Olive Glen with the evidence and gratitude of safely relying on God to meet all human needs. And we all have benefited from that. All of us here at Olive Glen, residents, staff, volunteers, board members, each of us has experienced the comfort and healing that comes with leaning wholeheartedly on God. And sometimes family members and visitors experience it as well. Whether it's the healing of a physical challenge, a relationship, or some issue that's been nagging at someone from their past, it might be a need for more staff members or a financial issue that's yet to be resolved. I have to say that each one of us here is learning what it means to turn to God in every instance, what it means to radically rely on God no matter what. And as we make our way in that direction, along the way, we've seen relationships mended, challenges with mobility, hearing, eyesight healed, and fears from memories of past experiences dissolved. We've seen volunteers appear precisely when their special skill set was most needed. And I remember a specially equipped van for our visiting Christian Science nursing service becoming available for purchase through a board member at just the right moment. And so many times over and over, we've seen monetary gifts arrive just in time to meet an unexpected need. I'm so grateful too for the Olive Glen board. They've been especially wonderful about how they approach the many issues that come up. They rely on God for direction. They've taken to heart what it says in the 3rd chapter of Proverbs. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Harv Kaufman is a member of the Olive Glen board, and I know he can certainly vouch for that. Right, Harv?
Absolutely, Carrie. I love being witness to the work that the Olive Glen board is doing and being witness to how that work gets done. These are some very capable people, but they're also very dedicated Christian Scientists. And so what happens so often, how that unfolds, is that as issues come up, there's a lot of praying and listening going on. And typically that leads to practical steps and inspired solutions. And so often, instead of just leaving it at that, there's a commitment to double down, to pray more humbly, to listen more quietly for that next bit of reveal that affirms more clearly that those ideas already brought forward are the right way to go. Or perhaps it opens up an entirely new way. I'm so grateful to be part of this, to witness this pathway for the continuing progress of Olive Glen's healing mission. And gratitude is an ever-present element with the board. Our gratitude for the loving care and the skills of our Christian Science nurses, for the dedication of our kitchen staff and facilities team and the office workers, and to all of you throughout our community who support this healing mission. We are so grateful to each one of you. This is such a team effort, such a gift of love and commitment from so many. It's daily evidence of the idea that there is work that we can do together that none of us can do alone. Your support to this work is vital in every form it takes, including your prayers, your volunteering, and your financial contributions. And with regard to financial contributions, you may be wondering, how much difference does my gift make in the big picture? Well, I can assure you, your gift, every gift, is part of the inspired financial support from the Olive Glen community, and it makes a huge difference. Income from our residents, our church friends, our guests, those who receive care from our Christian Science nursing staff. The contributions in support of those individuals accounts for about 75% of our total income. That's a lot, but it leaves a significant gap. That 25% gap is filled by grants and by donations from individuals and families, from you and others like you who recognize the importance of this work and want to support it. And just so you know, on the expense side, there's a similar ratio. About 75% of Olive Glen's entire budget goes towards employee salaries and benefits. About 25% goes towards other expenses, food, facility maintenance, utilities, and insurance. Now, I'd like to give you a quick progress report on the Courtyard project, the rebuild of Olive Glen's assisted living facility. An earlier newsletter outlined the impending need to replace Courtyard. We continue to move forward steadily. We have a great design for the new building, whether it's a remodel or needs to be an entirely new building from the ground up. Initial inspections are complete and being reviewed in their entirety. This is a big step. We're treading carefully, but we are moving forward. We welcome your support. Indeed, the healing mission of Olive Glen welcomes your support. If you'd like to be part of this progress, whenever you're ready, please be in touch. Call the office or reach out to Carrie or any board member. You can send a check or use the donate tab on the Olive Glen website. Just designate Courtyard for your gift of love. And lastly, I have this bit of good news to share. You may already know that Olive Glen is accredited by the Commission of Accreditation for Christian Science Nursing Organizations and Facilities. Just like driving a car, you can't do this because you think you'd be good. Every 3 years, Olive Glen must verify that it's fulfilling an established set of standards. This past May was Olive Glen's time for accreditation renewal from the Commission. And I can assure you it's somewhat more rigorous than a trip to the DMV. The Commission assigns a team to assess Olive Glen's record-keeping and documentation, our staff training levels, policies, and procedures, and then sends that team to Olive Glen to make a thorough on-site inspection and conduct in-person interviews, all to determine that Olive Glen is fulfilling its healing mission. So I'm very happy to report that the Commission has accredited Olive Glen through July 2025 as a Christian Science nursing facility. And they've also accredited our Christian Science nursing training program as well. Thank you so much for being with us, for being here today and always. Much love to you from everyone on the Olive Glen board. Back to you, Carrie.
Thanks so much, Harv. What you shared reminded me of something that our guest speaker, Emilio, had shared with us. He pointed out that radical reliance is based on law, the principle that divine love can meet every human need. And as many of us know, he's referring to the statement on page 494 of Science and Health by Mary Baker Eddy, where she says, divine love always has met and always will meet every human need. The members of the board have been making a conscious effort to apply that law and lean on it. And I know the Christian Science nursing staff is doing that as well. Don't you think so, Kate?
Oh, absolutely, Carrie. As I spoke with our house Christian Science practitioner recently, we talked about Olive Glen's radical reliance on God in relation to the belief of pandemic. We discussed how the pandemic may have closed Olive Glen's doors to outside visitors for a while, but the healing activity of the Christ never faltered or diminished. Christ's truth's healing light never dimmed, but kept shining. Olive Glen is the light on the hill which illumined the progress of healing activity, God's uninterrupted continuity of good. Here is an example of this. As Olive Glen prayed about ways we could continue to bless the community, the Visiting Christian Science Nurse Service was born. Since we first announced this at our last annual meeting, our Visiting Christian Science nurse, Emily Matson, has continued expansion of this service, supporting those who are radically relying on God for healing. The Visiting Christian Science Nursing Service has visited community members from 100 to 300 miles away and has, over the phone, assisted Christian scientists looking for care as far away as San Diego, from personal care and bandaging to reading from the periodicals and preparing meals. The Visiting Christian Science Nurse Service is prepared to meet the care needs of the broader Sacramento community, either by providing in-home services or providing care resources and suggestions through a phone call. Daily or weekly visits are a way to bring cheer and reassurance to individuals. On one occasion, the Visiting Christian Science Nursing Service received a call on a Friday afternoon from an individual a few hours south with some questions about supplementing their metaphysical work with visits from a Christian Science nurse. The service provided some ideas of what the caller could do over the weekend that might help with comfort and harmony, and then scheduled a visit for the following Tuesday and agreed to keep in touch. On Monday, the service received a call that there was no longer a need to visit, that the ideas shared had met the need, and the individual was able to calmly and confidently continue independently with their work. On another occasion, the visiting Christian Science nurse had been providing cleansing and covering care for an individual on a regular basis. One morning, the service got a call that the individual had woken up and known that healing was accomplished. And during their visit that day, it was confirmed that there was no longer a need. The visiting Christian Science nurse stayed and visited, reading and sharing together and rejoicing in the immediacy of healing, even after a few months of receiving care. When talking with an individual in our community, they shared, visiting Christian Science nurses are the outward manifestation of Mary Baker Eddy's definition of angels, practically manifested in ways that meet the human need, manifested through skillful, loving, gentle kindness, confident metaphysics, and so much more. These qualities don't just visit, they remain after the visiting Christian Science nurse leaves to embrace the patient in God's love and to support the patient's progress. The visiting Christian Science nursing service is actively taking the opportunity to attend church board and business meetings, sharing information about the scope of service provided. A lot of wonderful connections have come out of these meetings, as you can imagine. Another example of this progress has been our Christian Science Nursing Education Department. 8 years ago, Olive Glen adopted Leverger training program. The department has been very full and blessed this year. There are 4 level 2 students, 2 level 3 students, and 1 level 4 student. After a Christian Science nursing class grounded in metaphysics, which frees the Christian Science nurses for to meet practical needs, there is a period of mentoring with the students. This part of our education program has taken off this year, and students are getting the additional practical skills and training so essential in any training program. The students have been working side by side with dedicated mentors, helping them support the transition from the classroom setting to working on the Christian Science nursing floor here at Olive Glen. The visiting Christian Science nurse service supports the students with taking them out on appropriate cases to support the ongoing of their healing practice. The education department has also provided in-service training for our Christian Science nurses. We are very grateful. Olive Glen offers a wonderful interactive seminar that can be shared with your branch church or any gathering interested in learning more about Christian Science nursing and Mrs. Eddy's bylaw for the Christian Science nurse. Please call us if you are interested in scheduling this seminar. Just like Nehemiah, we have challenges. Each time he prayed and turned to God to radically rely on and to provide answers, Nehemiah did not look back. With every stone placed on the wall, he gave God the glory and rejoiced in the progress. And this is what we do at Olive Glen. Here are a few examples of healings we have witnessed at Olive Glen, as we have all defended our radical reliance on God and thought about how mind unfolds infinitely from perfection. We have witnessed healing of mobility with a very quick reversal of unsteadiness restored to correct balance. We have witnessed healing of mental needs. Order and harmony was expressed where there was discord and chaos. We have witnessed confidence expressed where there was fear. And we have witnessed healing with nourishment, with appetite being restored. If you are interested in the ministry of Christian Science nursing, please reach out to me here at Olive Glen and I will be happy to talk with you. I will now introduce to you Emilio Casterman. Emilio is a native of Argentina. In 1981, he left his successful career with the government and his design and building company to study Christian Science nursing in the United States. Later, in 1993, he entered the full-time public practice of Christian Science healing in San Francisco, California. Emilio has served on several nonprofit boards related to Christian Science nursing. He was a volunteer chaplain in San Quentin State Prison for 5 years and conducted workshops for chaplains throughout California, Illinois, and Boston. He has served in many different positions in his branch church. He appeared in a video presentation sponsored by the Mother Church about Christian Science nursing, and he is currently serving on the board of trustees of his church, Sunday school teacher on the Principia College campus, and teacher of the Sunday school online in Spanish for the Mother Church. Welcome, Emilio.
Thank you, Kate. Dear friends, welcome. It's a privilege and a joy for me to be here today in such an important occasion. I would like to start with the story of a friend of mine who lives in southern Spain. He has a beautiful backyard with a swimming pool and beautiful gardens filled with plants and flowers, where birds play all day long. He told me that one day was very quiet, and he noticed that the birds had stopped chirping. Then he went outside and looked, and he only saw one bird, which was standing frozen on the ground. And he would not move. Then he saw a black shadow moving towards the bird. It was a garden snake. When the snake was about to strike the bird, my friend, as loud as he could, clapped, and the bird immediately flew away. Let's pretend for a moment that this was a Christian Science bird, which had gone to Sunday school, and that he was asking God for help. How do you think he would have asked? Would he have asked God for bigger wings so he could fly higher and escape the danger? Or would he have asked for more wings in order to move faster and dodge the snake? Maybe he could have looked up the word wings in Concord. Or maybe he thought that there was something wrong with his wings, some kind of sickness, maybe wingivitis or something like that. But the problem was not that he needed new or better wings, but that he needed to remember he had already wings because he was a bird, therefore fully equipped to fly. He just had to regain the awareness of who he was. You see, it wasn't that the bird didn't fly away sooner because he had a real problem, but because the mesmeric fear had paralyzed his thinking. He forgot who he was. The clapping awakened the bird and helped him to think freely again and to remember of his natural ability to fly. Sometimes when we think we are having a problem, we too have to regain our awareness of who we are as children of God, so we can exercise our God-given abilities, which we already have. Mary Baker Eddy wrote in Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, Christ is the true idea, voicing good, the divine message from God to man, speaking to the human consciousness. This divine message, like clapping, is an awakening reminder of who we really are, the spiritual children, manifestations of God, Therefore, pure, whole, free, healthy. This message tells us that we are safe, cared for, and protected by our Father, Mother, divine love. We all have wings of fresh inspiration, taking us higher and higher in the beautiful sky of a spiritual understanding of God and his perfect reflection, man. We can all keep clapping, thinking spiritually, in celebration and gratitude of God's creation. Every day, many of us are called to face some of the most important practical demonstrations in overcoming challenges as individuals and in our communities. Today, we have Christian Science nurses who are required a confirmed demonstration of the Christian Science practice. In addition, they must deeply understand the practical ability of caring and mastering the skills necessary when looking after those in need. We also have those serving in the administration, staff members, and volunteers. These dedicated professional team work together in unity to support and encourage radical reliance, helping to maintain our trust in God. They are all loyal workers, spiritual defenders, immediate responders, supporters, cheerleaders, and, in a way, superheroes in our efforts to trust God in every situation. King David even wrote a song about it. Oh, clap your hands, all ye people. Shout unto God with a voice of triumph. Today, the world faces many challenges, whether the issue appears to be sickness, fear, suffering, or discouragement. The need to defend against them is key for the successful healing outcome. To defend means to protect, to stand up for, to keep safe from danger. One of the most important defense we are going to consider is our radical reliance on God. Quoting the psalmist, Mrs. Eddy writes, "Step by step will those who trust him find that God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble." How encouraging is this assurance? It is through our dependence in God that we find his help to be available and all-powerful. The basis of radical reliance is the practice of placing our trust in God without any reservations. The awareness of our eternal well-being under God's government and his loving protection. This is why our desire to turn to God in times of need is natural, practical, and effective in finding God our refuge and strength to resolve any difficulty. A vital point to the success in Christian Science is the strict adherence to the standard of healing established by Mrs. Eddy. She tells us in the following statement, it is not wise to take a halting and halfway position or to expect to work equally with spirit and matter, truth and error. There is but one way, namely God and his idea, which leads to a spiritual being. The scientific government of the body must be attained through the divine mind. It is impossible to gain control over the body in any other way. End of quote. And she adds, only through radical reliance on truth can scientific healing power be realized. This is the Christian Science process of healing. To depart from this systematic plan of action, to rely on any other material techniques or healing, or to endeavor to mix spiritual means with the material methods, is not in accord with Christian Science and its teachings. Such a departure, instead of helping the patient, can only result in limiting the demonstration of Christian healing. Mrs. Eddy asked this question: does Christian Science or metaphysical healing include medication, material hygiene, mesmerism, hypnotism, theosophy, or spiritualism? Answer: not one of them is included in it. As students of Christian Science, we must be alert to defend ourselves against mortal minds' persistent and aggressive suggestions that matter heals, and that material methods are equally or more effective than a spiritual means. This is an imposition of material-centered thinking on human consciousness that has to be confronted, rebuked, and overcome. We hear Materia Medica's persistent promises of health, restoration, strength, longevity, and freedom through this or that procedure, or this or that new drug, or of a new material panacea that will save us. This invasive mental argument tries to manipulate and control thought, then consciousness, and ultimately one's life. This is hypnotism, which has to be denounced, resisted, and destroyed. If one is seeking healing through Christian Science treatment and is taking a little longer than expected, he might entertain a thought that material means may provide a possible solution. This innocent advice is not really his or our thinking, but a mental house call of Materia Medica, knocking on the portal of human consciousness, asking for entrance. In her discovery, Mrs. Eddy explains a very important point in metaphysics. So long as matter is the basis of practice, illness cannot be efficaciously treated by the metaphysical process. Let me share an experience of a friend of mine that had, she called me in the middle of the night asking if I could pray for her because she was having great difficulty breathing. So when I began to pray, I pondered if I needed to treat her throat or lungs, when a clear message came to my thought that my friend was a spiritual idea without a single element of error or matter. This message was so common and persistent that I stayed with it, and after 20 minutes, my friend called back, indicating she was free and the healing was permanent. A citation that often is quoted: if a Christian Scientist ever failed to receive aid from other scientists, their brethren upon whom they may call, God will still guide them into the right use of temporary and eternal means. This statement has been referred to as a type of permission or justification for using material remedies. The confusion appears when the word God, temporary, and eternal mean healing with matter. If we substitute the word God by its synonym spirit, we read now, God, Spirit, will still guide them, all of us, into the right, the correct use of temporary and eternal means. How does Spirit guide us in our practical needs? What kind of solution does Spirit provide? God's Spirit leads us to witness His very presence, His spiritual qualities, for the proper and practical solutions for harmony, comfort, and healing. Robert Peels, in Years of Authority, wrote about the right use of temporary and eternal means in this way. This has never been interpreted officially as sanctioning resort to drug therapy, since another passage in the same book states categorically, only through radical reliance on truth can scientific healing power be realized. The temporary means referred to have been taken to include crutches, eyeglasses, hearing aids, nursing care without medication, the setting of a broken bone by a surgeon, and other expedients obviously not intended to heal the impairment or diseased condition, but to help a person carry on in some fashion until a genuine healing could take place. Mrs. Eddy alerts us when she writes, no hypothesis as to the existence of another power should interpose a doubt or fear to hinder the demonstration of Christian science. Teach the great possibilities of man endued with divine science. Teach the dangerous possibility of dwarfing the spiritual understanding and demonstration of truth by sin or by recourse to material means for healing. Teach the meekness and might of life hid with Christ in God, and there will be no desire for other healing methods. Then she warns us, you render the divine law of healing obscure and void when you weigh the human in the scale with the divine, or limit in any direction of thought the omnipresence and omnipotence of God. Today, one can only and very easily Google, for instance, God and medicine, to find a vast array of topics, from what does God say about taking medicine to reputable Christian doctors who believe that there are two ways that God accomplishes healing in the world. The first category is natural law of healing, which is beautifully exemplified through modern medicine. The second category is the supernatural acts of healing that are alive and well today, and best understood through the Word of God, not the scientific method. This is an attempt to link the practice of materia medica with God's will, in this manner misrepresenting God, Spirit, as the authority who provides and approves material medical methods. This belief has influenced most religions to ask God, Spirit, to heal matter. In contrast, Jesus demonstrated the method of God in healing sickness and sin, as Mrs. Eddy writes. If God created drugs for medical use, Jesus and his disciples would have used them and named them for that purpose. For he came to do the will of the Father. And she adds, it is plain that God does not employ drugs or hygiene, nor provide them for human use. Else, Jesus would have recommended and employed them in his healing. The divine mind never called matter medicine, and matter required a material and human belief before it could be considered as medicine. The wrong promise, or the wrong premise as well, is the dualistic belief of existence that man is material and spiritual. But Mrs. Eddy discovered in the science of Christianity that man is not material, but that he is spiritual, that is, without a single atom of matter. She added, if we trust matter, we distrust spirit. One important aspect of our defense is that we need to keep knowing that we don't live in a material world, but in a mental universe. As the Apostle Paul also wrote, for in him, Spirit, we live and move and have our being. Therefore, the spiritual purity of our thinking and love for God is what we are defending. Again, Mrs. Eddy gives us a clear guidance when she wrote, it is not wise to take a halting and halfway position or to expect to work equally with spirit and matter, truth and error. There is but one way, namely God and his idea, which leads to a spiritual being. Let me share a practical example of a young mother. She proved that trusting God in all circumstances was practical, with healing results for her son. One afternoon, she called and asked me for help her with prayer. She was crying and said that just a few minutes before, when she was in the kitchen with her son, he spilled boiling water all over himself from a kettle that was on the stove. I could hear him crying in the background. I began by reassuring her that there was a healing law of God based on the biblical promise I am the Lord that healeth thee. That with God all good was possible. That the law of love was in full operation, replacing any burning feelings with the action of all comforting power of divine love, restoring health right there. Acknowledging God's omnipresence and constant care resulted first in reducing her fear and then replacing it with the expectancy of good and healing. We trusted God, our lawgiver, our life giver, our health giver. She said, but I don't know what to do. I assured her that God was intelligent and wise, and he would direct her steps to do the most practical, caring, and loving thing she needed to do for her son. We just needed to be still for a moment to listen for God's direction, to hold communion with him. The nearest Christian Science nurse was 2.5 hours away. You see, like all responsible parents, she was attentive and caring and wanted only the very best care available to her for her son. She turned to God because in the past, she had experienced many quick and effective healings purely through prayer. She felt free to trust God for guidance and healing this time too. There was no pressure or control on what she should do, no human advice. She was free to make her own decisions and to follow what she thought was in her best interest and that of her child. Within a minute, she stopped crying and said, I know what I have to do. I am going to the emergency room for temporary and practical assistance, and I will call you back. Please pray for my son, which I agreed to do. That evening, she called back, indicating that in the ER, doctors had seen her son and placed him under observation. That they didn't want to do anything but cover with bandages some areas of his body, just only for protection. They predicted that he would be heavily scarred for life. They offered pain medication, but while they were there, a doctor saw the son become peaceful and calm in response to her singing hymns and reassuring him. And attributing this comforting action to a mother's love, they remarked on the effectiveness of it in place of giving pain medication. The hospital let them return home, but they asked to see him again the next morning. That night, she called me back, asking for more support, and that her husband, who was not a Christian Scientist, was asking if he could join us with prayer. We all rejoiced. The next day, she called and said that she had gone to the ER and had to face the doctors and nurses, which were very afraid of her son's possible disfigurement for life. But when the nurses removed the bandages, they remarked, "This is a miracle. Keep doing what you are doing." And they told her that now she could change his bandages. For the next few days, she and her husband took the practical steps needed to bandage the wounds, and they were relying on prayer to guide their care as they were reaching for a complete healing. Within a week, the wounds had disappeared completely, and her son's chest became normal and unblemished. The healing has been complete and lasting. Mrs. Eddy writes, a Christian Scientist's medicine is mind, the divine truth that makes man free. The Christian Scientist never recommends material hygiene, never manipulates. The basis of radical reliance is defending our thoughts of our natural trust in God, our Father, Mother, and the importance of cherishing and protecting this natural inclination of turning to God in times of need. Mrs. Eddy warns us that wrong is thought before it is acted. You must control it in the first instance, or it will control you in the second. But how do we do this? How do we protect ourselves? For me, it takes simple steps during the day by reversing arguments of promises that material medicine heals. I use the opportunity to declare the omnipotence and perfection of God and his universe, of my oneness with life and love. I affirm my natural radical reliance on my Creator. Maintaining trust in God requires our attention and active participation. There is no power that can resist or defeat conscious, wholehearted trust in God good. Mrs. Eddy reassures us that having faith in the divine principle of health and spiritually understanding God sustains man under all circumstances. This is powerful. So let's put this into practice for a moment. Choose any challenge and mentally confront it by maybe saying, I have faith in the divine principle of health, the one omnipotent mind. I spiritually understand God good as the only cause and effect. Divine love sustains me under all circumstances. Divine love meets all my needs. Those facing difficulties who are working hard to solve their problems may ask how long they must trust in God before obtaining relief from trouble. They will find their answer in the words of Isaiah, trust ye in the Lord forever. And why? Because what is there to trust but divine love? Higher we cannot look. Eddy writes, in the dark hours, wise Christian Scientists stand firmer than ever in their allegiance to God. Wisdom is wedded to their love, and their hearts are not troubled. When one's thinking is anchored in God's goodness, one's thinking is impervious to invasion by errors, false arguments. One cannot be turned or distracted from the Christ truth, which enlightens and leads him. Nor can he be prevented from receiving the fruitful results of his faithful work. Mrs. Eddy also writes, If we can aid in abating suffering and diminishing sin, we shall have accomplished much. But if we can bring to the general thought this great fact that drugs cannot produce health and harmony, since in him, mind, we live and move and have our being, we shall have done more. How can we do this Christianly scientific work? By entrenching ourselves in the knowledge that our true temple is no human fabrication, but the superstructure of truth. This is what also Mrs. Eddy is counseling us. And Christ, Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. David wrote, "Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgiveth all thine iniquities, who healeth all thy diseases, who redeemeth thy life from destruction, who crowneth thee with loving kindness and tender mercies. And in thee, O Lord, do I put my trust. Thou hast given commandment to save me." So you can see there is no fear in trusting God, divine love. Another psalm is, "Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them." And in the Aramaic Bible in plain English, this is translated in this way: "Great is the peace of those who love your law, and they have no sickness." And according to Nahum from the Bible, the Lord is good. He is safe place to go to in times of trouble. He takes care of those who trust him. And also in one of our hymns, hymn 115, "We would trust in thy protecting, wholly rest upon thine arm, follow wholly thy directing. Thou our only guard from harm." Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emilio, for that inspiring and healing message. Let's close, shall we, with a hymn. Let's read together the words of hymn 53 from the Christian Science hymnal. Everlasting arms of love are beneath, around, above. God it is who bears us on. His the arm we lean upon. He our ever-present guide, faithful is whate'er betide. Gladly then we journey on, with his arm to lean upon. From earth's fears and vain alarms, safe in his encircling arms. He will keep us all the way, God, our refuge, strength, and stay. Thank you for joining us today. You are so loved.